You're listening to CRM Audio, the Microsoft Power Platform Business Applications podcast. I'm Joel Lindstrom, and we're going to be talking about training and brain dumps today with Julie Yack. Hey, Julie, how you doing today?
I am well, Joel. How are you?
Good. I don't know if this is the first time you've been on CRM Audio or not. I think you were on one way back a long time ago, but I think every time we asked you, you said, I don't listen to podcasts.
Correct. I do. I am not a podcast listener.
That's okay. But I have not been as avid a podcast listener as I was before COVID because I never drive anywhere now. I just sit in this room all day long. And so I don't have any car time. But I still enjoy doing them and listening to them from time to time. But
maybe that's my problem is that it's a 4-minute drive to my office, even when I'm going to my office.
Yes.
So what can you learn in 4 minutes?
We should go to 4-minute podcasts, or
awesome.
like do what Neil Benson does and listen to him at like 500 speed. You get a lot in there. So I wanted to bring you on because I find it interesting. I find it, first of all, interesting. I see all the badges being posted on LinkedIn, and it's to me kind of funny to see just check out my achievement, and then you see 20 other people check out my achievement. But you're involved. You've been involved with a lot of both the trainers and also training content development, for some of the Microsoft exams and the courses and things like that. So seems to be a pretty popular thing to be doing, getting certified. But also every time I post one or I see one posted, there's always that one guy that says, congratulations, can you share the dumps with me?
Exactly.
So I thought brain dumps would be a great topic. So what is a brain dump, Julie?
It is essentially someone who has gone to taking the exam, and they immediately after the exam will try to replicate as many of the questions as they can possibly remember. And there are companies out there where I'm sure they have a whole team of people who go out and do such things. And actually, it's a violation of a legal agreement that they have, because when you take the exam, you have to agree to certain terms, and among them is you're not going to share the questions.
Right. Okay. And this goes back, years ago, ever since CRM version 3, maybe before then, which CRM version 3 was the first time I got certified back in 2007, I think it was. But yeah, I'll admit, I used Test King for my first one. We had at the company that I worked for at the time, I didn't know any better, and they had a dog-eared copy of the Test King test results for the CRM 3.0 configuration certification exam. And I'll admit I used that.
I did as well for the application exam, and CRM 3.0 was my first cert. Things are much different now than they were then, right? I mean, we have so many more options and resources available for learning, and the exams are better written now.
Right. Right. Yeah. I think, and back then, what did you really have? You could, if you lived somewhere where there was paid training classes, you could go there. There wasn't online training. It's hard to remember, but it wasn't really a thing back then.
Right. Yeah. You pretty much had to go to a class.
Right.
And Dynamics has never been as popular of a training category as some of the sexier things that we see coming out from the stack.
Yeah. And so what's changed since then? I know they're updating them much more frequently than back then. I think we went 5 years between exams being rewritten.
Well, but we also went how many years between product releases?
Right. Right.
So it was comparable. And what's changed is a few different things. Access to learning materials now, it's everywhere. I honestly think there's really no excuse anymore to use a test dump. That there are so many other options that are readily available and free that will help you prepare for the exam. And then also the exams are more improved with a goal of actually trying to test those things that you really need to know, not trick questions as in what color is this button on the screen.
Right. And actually, this topic came up, and the idea for this podcast came up because I was I don't know how I stumbled across this, but there was a 2012 MSDN forum post where basically people were asking, is Test King legitimate? And you actually responded and said, I use Test King as a study aid, and it worked for me. The problem isn't the study materials, it's the tests themselves. So sounds like, wiser Julie now, still, has the same opinion that the tests were poor quality back then, and there just wasn't. They needed to be overhauled, is what your wording was, and they're rapidly overhauled now.
Yes, absolutely. But also, that post that you're referencing, that was for CRM4,
right?
And I was a technical editor on that exam, and I failed that exam. That tells you how bad they were. I was in the middle of teaching boot camp, teaching people how to pass the exam, right? And I failed it.
Yeah, so that says something. And I mean, I think that we didn't have as many exams either. There was just a broader application and a broader configuration. It was less of an application back then too, let's be honest. But it was also, just gotcha questions, and again, things were outdated. And so, yeah, it's definitely better now. But I think when I get the question like, hey, can you share the dumps? What I tell people is, besides, you're right. I mean, technically, and I guess, I don't know if anybody this has actually happened to, but if you read the agreement, if it's proven that you used materials like that to pass a test, not only can that test be voided, but you can have all your certs revoked and be banned for life from taking it. That's pretty extreme. I've heard that, I've seen that in there. Have you actually known anybody that actually happened to, or heard of anybody that actually happened to?
No, I've not seen anything like that. And actually, that's a level of detail that I wasn't aware of. I know that if you are the one caught doing the sharing, that are the potential ramifications. But for you to go and find a study aid, how are you supposed to know when you're out looking for study aids that it's not a legitimate source?
Right. All right. Sean, the CRM Hobbit Tabor is here now. And Sean, this is Brain Dump confession time. Okay. Julie and I both confessed that in CRM version 3 or CRM version 4, we did use Test King. Mm-hmm. Have you ever used a brain dump?
Yeah. I used a brain dump for the financial advisor exam way back when.
So your financial advisor credentials are fraudulent?
Oh, no.
You still passed the test.
Yeah, I passed the test. I worked in IT. I was a product manager for CRM in a financial services firm. So the thing that I needed help on was options. I just couldn't get it. I got everything else, but I couldn't get options. It was just beyond me for some reason. But yeah, I used it didn't help because when I used it, full transparency, I still failed. So I had to study and then retake the exam, and then I passed it. So with aid, but yeah, I did use a test dump.
So here's where the world has changed, and how I've had people on my team accidentally stumble into brain dumps. You're not going to accidentally stumble into giving Test King or whatever your credit card. That's something that you're not going to do that. But Quizlet.
But how do you know that Test King's a problem? If you've never taken an exam before, how do you know? And maybe this is a good commercial for that. Maybe we should censor out their name. How do you know that those companies are not legitimate? How do you know if you've never done this before?
Right. That's a good point.
You're especially right. The way that they market themselves. They don't market themselves as a fraudulent method to, they're market themselves as like test aids or study guides or things of that nature, when oftentimes that's not what they are.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's very. So yes, you could do that. What I was saying is, sites like Quizlet now, people are taking the brain dumps and setting up quizzes in Quizlet, and then people will just be searching and come across a practice exam, but it's somebody has taken the questions, and so that's where again I think you need to be really selective about what you are. But there's so much good content with Learn in other places out there that you know is good, but yeah.
And you're getting more official curriculum, and you're getting more official help. So there are legitimate sources where they've been contracted to create practice exams.
Right.
And those are legitimate. But you're going to get there through a Microsoft path, not through a random internet search.
Right.
Well, and I also think the maturization, is that the word? The maturing. Can't think of the word. But you get where I'm going.
Just pick up the word.
Yeah. The evolution of the exams are such that you really have to have some level of practical knowledge to pass a lot of these exams. Back in the day, like when I went to the University of Phoenix for 8 weeks to get my MCSE for Windows NT 4.0, right? I never before that class even messed with Windows NT, but that was my way. I was trying to get into IT. Now with certain exams, not all, but certain exams, you have to have some level of practical knowledge of that area to be able to pass that exam.
And I think that's the goal, right?
Right, exactly. Right. Exactly. It's much harder to be a paper cert kind of person.
Well, and I have a mixed feeling on certifications in general, and I've never been shy about this. I think that experience is much better indication of whether or not you're a valuable resource, but I don't know how to evaluate that.
Yeah,
and so
you're right.
Certs are unnecessary evil, just like when my kids were in high school. Well, nobody cares about your GPA now, Mom. Why should I care about mine? Well, if that's all I have to measure you by, it matters.
Right.
So if those certs is all I can measure you by, it matters.
Well, and from a practical standpoint, I look at it within our field service team. I look at it as a measure of, okay, who has put forth the work to at least attain the certification. So who's done the work, to study, to at least to set for the exam and pass it. That to me establishes a baseline of what knowledge they should have, an expectation, and then you layer that on top of their project experience that they have. That gives you a somewhat a gauge of the people you have on your team and what functions they can actually serve on a project. That's how I use it.
Right.
Well, and I won't name any of my certs by name, but there are some certs that I have that I don't feel that I'm qualified to practice, but that's on me. That I'm not going to go out and use that cert just because I attained it.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, I'm very focused and targeted on the certs I get. If I don't feel I can effectively demonstrate that capability, I'm not going to bother getting the cert. That's not to belittle anybody that loves to get every cert under the sun. Like,
I just had to get the field service exam because my colleagues that won't be named were giving me a hard time because that was the one I didn't have.
I'll name them. Me. It was me.
Well, so keep in mind that there's more than one way to attain a cert. That I don't know if it's still the same, but previously you could attain a cert by participating in the creation of the exams.
Right. Mm-hmm. And that's where I tell people, if you ever see an MVP post on LinkedIn on the same day, look at my achievement, they probably participated in writing those exams.
Right. And technically we're not supposed to name which ones that we've helped on, but I've helped on several of the exams, and I'd like to think that we're making them better than they used to be.
So if you don't like the questions, it's Julie's fault.
Well, and actually, so what we're getting to see a lot now is that there are different groups doing the training materials and different groups doing the exam questions, which I like, because then it gives you, I guess, a better view to make sure that it's covering what it needs to cover.
Right.
Because at some point it'll come back and tell you that the material's bad or the test is bad.
A little bit of a layer of abstraction.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and the what I tell my team and people on LinkedIn that say, "Hey, can you share the brain dump?" I say no, and not only is it unethical, but you're selling yourself short, because think of it this way. Number one is companies that sell brain dumps are going off of people's memories, and you can tell. And this is one thing I tell people: if you're on Quizlet and you see questions, one thing to look at is grammatical errors, misspellings, things like that. If it has those are the kind of signs you see, and if that's the level of quality control they put into their training materials, how do you know the answers aren't wrong, or the person that was doing the brain dump didn't get that question wrong, and you're learning their wrong answer? But also, you're not learning anything, and the value of the exam and the process of getting ready for it is learning something. And you could find yourself, by misrepresenting that you're an expert at field service, marketing, customer service, whatever, you may get put into a project involving that, and then you'll be over your head. And that's not going to do anybody any favors, because I've worked with people that, you think are experts at customer service, and they turn out not to be, and they're no longer my colleagues in some cases. So not just talking about anybody in specific there, but that's the kind of thing, is taking those kind of shortcuts. You might get short-term gain, but besides being unethical, and again, what's your reputation worth? I guess, is it worth, an exam? Is that the price of your reputation? Then it's not worth very much.
Well, and right now with exam prices being, what did they just say, like $15? What do you have to lose to try to take one? Because what is the best study guide possible is a failed exam. Right? You go in there and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to just totally bomb this and not pass this exam.
I didn't see the $15 thing. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So slow down, reread every question, reread every answer for your own knowledge, because there's no better study guide than the test.
Yep.
So Julie, what have you learned as someone who develops training and also has written tests? I think working through that process made me a better test taker. But do you have any kind of techniques you use when you're taking an exam to not tell you what the right answer is, but maybe have a better chance or weed out the distractors more easily? Are there certain things you look for?
I am a very logical, methodical thinker. So if I don't know an answer right away, just from reading it and saying, oh, this is, it's B, then I'm pretty good at quickly dismissing the distractors, the things that are wrong, and then recognizing, oh, well, this feature, this widget applies over here, not over here. It has nothing to do with this question or things like that. One thing about the test is you're not allowed to have wrong answers that are just made up things.
Right.
There are no fairy tales. Right. We can't make up product features. We can't make up product names. Whatever the possible answers are real things that exist in the realm of the exam.
Right. Yeah.
And so that's an important distinction.
Yeah, so it needs to be a real thing. Now, it might not be a real thing in that part of the application. It might be a real thing somewhere else, but it's a legitimately a thing. My favorite, my technique is read the questions backwards. I mean, not like every word backwards, but like read the last sentence first, because that's usually the real question. The stuff before that is detail. Say there's, Bob works at an insurance company. The company has people in XYZ department. Bob wants to do this. So the Bob wants to do this sentence is the most important thing. And sometimes you get enough detail from that, but that also focuses me so I don't get thrown off by some random detail earlier in the question that doesn't really have anything to do with what they're really asking.
Absolutely. And also reducing the excess words, right? We don't necessarily need all those adjectives to understand what the question is.
Right.
So if you can get rid of the fluff in the sentence and get right down to the meat of the question, that's helpful as well.
So some of these exams are being updated. Are they updated quarterly now, or they're updated multiple times a year? Some of them, aren't they?
I think so. I'm not involved in that part of the process.
That's what I heard. At least twice a year is what I understand.
It's almost you have to stay up to date with the release cycle, because the first year or so when they started the more frequent releases, the exams were all woefully behind. Now they seem to be more up to date.
Well, and from a training content perspective, it's a continual update. So how do you make training content that will reflect the product but age well? It's very challenging.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, so getting certified is important, but it's not the ultimate thing. That's where, again, I would encourage people, especially, I don't want to assume everybody's a quote-unquote biz apps consultant, like we are. If you're using it in your line of work, just going to Microsoft Learn and going through the training, even if you never intend to get certified, there's a value. I recently, I got my MCT earlier this year, and I've been doing like MB600 classes, for some of our customers and other things like that. And I don't know if they'll ever get certified or not, but just that process and learning that, just learning to learn and being the lifelong learner, can help you be a lot more effective at what you're doing.
Yeah, well, and something else to consider with this whole test dump concept is back in the day, like when we talked about earlier with Serum 3.0, Serum 4.0, the ability to get good content for training out of customer source or partner source, I mean, it's night and day compared to what's available now on Docs and Microsoft Learn, right? So I think there's a certain level of kudos you got to give Microsoft for stepping up the game on what content is out there and available, as well as the constant updating of the exams too. Because that, to me, I'm more inclined to be like that lifelong learner if that content is easily accessible and attainable, as opposed to having to hunt and peck and try to find the right access key to get into a treasure trove of information.
I've got to wonder how much of that was a response to Salesforce's Trailhead, because that was when Trailhead came out, or shortly after that, was when we saw the DLP be sunsetted, Learn stood up, but they both have cartoon raccoons, for crying out loud. It's like you should call us trail. It's a Trailhead, maybe Trail Stop or something.
Trailblazer.
No, they use Trailblazer, and that's Mark Benioff's book too. So you have something else.
Yeah.
Well, that tells you that it had to have some influence for sure.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, anyway, Julie, this is great. What about other things outside of biz apps? Do you do any kind of training? You still doing the Washington D.C. stuff for technology or anything like that?
For the most part, yes. However, the whole world is different right now.
Right.
I have not been to a store or eaten at a restaurant or anything like that since March 7th.
Wow.
So I was super excited because last night I picked up carryout for dinner. And it was at one of our local restaurants, and I know the owner, and it was like seeing an old friend, but with masks, and he had gloves and all that. If and
when this goes back to somewhat normal, my dog is not going to know what to do, because she literally never goes in her crate anymore.
See, we've been putting ours in their crates for a couple hours every afternoon for a nap.
Okay.
Just so we don't lose that.
So you tell them it's nap time?
I do, and they go right to their kennels.
It sounds like Sean's house, man. He's got the world's weirdest dog routine, I thought, but.
My dog sits in my office with me like my assistant, reminds me when it's lunchtime, and when it's time to go out for a walk.
Yeah. Well, Charlie is here with us now. She's taking a nap on my
Charlie.
And Xena is out on a walk with Dave. So you guys have been to my house.
Yes. Oh, yes, we have.
In order to go for a walk from my house, you have to go up that awful hill.
It's like you need mountain climbing gear to go,
exactly.
go on a walk.
It's like a 20% grade to go up and leave my house.
And you have to fight off all the cougars too.
We actually had a newborn fawn that was wandering the yard yesterday. It was probably the smallest deer I'd ever seen. It just looked like it was a day or two old. And for whatever reason, it didn't listen to Mom and stay put. It was napping under a tree right outside my office.
Wow.
But anyhow, Dave and Xena are out on their long walk. But I don't like to go up that hill. I just like to go up that hill. I'll do it once or twice a week. But yeah, Dave and Xena do it every day. But, Xena has 4 legs, so she's like 4-wheel drive. And so it's a lot easier for her to go up that hill than me.
That is not, for those of you listening, the hill we're talking about is not a small hill. It's an intimidating hill. So
it's intimidating in a car.
Yeah.
Let alone to walk it. And it's not paved. So
and living in some place where you can have snow and ice into the summer too.
Yeah.
Yes. It actually snowed in June here.
Keeps life.
This is not a laziness issue. This is a
survival.
This is somewhat of a health and safety issue at times.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Well,
so,
Julie,
you asked about Washington, D.C.
Yes.
So, yes, I'm still working with the same group. It's the Association for Competitive Technology / the App Association. They work with a few different types of businesses. And yes, we are still working on advocacy, even though we can't do it in person. And so with that group, I've been able to go to Washington, D.C. every year for like 10 years or more. And they arrange for meetings with my congressmen, with my senators, with staff members, with committees. We've helped with things at the FCC. I've counseled folks at the White House. And so, yes, I still get to do that whenever possible.
Nice.
That's really cool. That's
nice.
Really cool.
And you get to, since you do a lot of work with the training development for Microsoft, do you get to take a breath of now that it's the end of the fiscal year and the beginning of the new fiscal year?
Let's say no.
Now, normally, you and David would travel all over the place and take world tours and see all kinds of exotic locations. This has been unusual for you to just be in one place for months. Yeah,
I think I've only been to like 4 or 5 countries this year.
Only.
Yeah.
Sean and I were bemoaning the state of our frequent flyer miles.
Yes.
Back.
I don't know how to spend them. Right? Well, so I know I'm not going anywhere.
Right.
Well, my pain is I know how to spend them, but I can't get my daughter to go anywhere now. So, because the last trip we were supposed to go to was right before MVP Summit. I was going to bring her with me to go to Seattle and spend the week. And now that that's not a thing, I don't really know what to do.
Well, I might try to convince my daughter and her husband to come visit. They live in Hawaii, so that'll be a good mile spend. I would go there, except it's a 2-week quarantine when you land, right. And it's a well-enforced 2-week quarantine when you land. And so, how long would you have to be there to make that 2-week quarantine worthwhile?
Right.
Yeah, you'd have to be there at least a month more.
Yeah. I mean, they're serious about it. If you go check into a hotel, they give you a key card that works once, and you have to stay in your room.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And I've talked to some of my colleagues who have traveled, for vacation, whatever, and they were saying it's totally different now. You don't have the breakfast. at the hotel. You have certain times where you get a box, and if you miss it, you don't get anything, and they don't clean your room.
Yep.
So.
Well, my son he came and visited a few weeks ago. He lives in downtown Philly, and there were, riots and looting and whatnot, and he lived in an area where it wasn't very safe. And if his apartment's above a bookstore, and if they had set that bookstore on fire during the riots and looting, then he would have been pretty quickly homeless. So he and his cat hopped on a plane and came here for a week. And traveling was just very different.
Well, I guess it's a good time to study for some certification exams. Just don't use your brain dumps.
Well, okay, but on that note, I thought, because I want to take the MB600.
Yes, which you should.
Which I should, but I am afraid to, because my wife and daughter are teachers. We've upgraded our internet as much as we can. And when they get on a session, bandwidth, I get nothing. I get kicked out of calls all the time. So I don't want to even go down the path of trying to sit for an exam at my desk and then have the internet go out.
Is there school going on right now?
Well, not right now, no.
So take it now.
Your excuse?
Well, I'm on this podcast right now.
So of all the exams that I've taken, the MB600 was okay. I didn't have a lot of complaints. There were a couple of minor issues. I took it while I was in beta, and so I gave the feedback, and I was assured things were corrected. But this exam did not make me angry.
No, it's a good exam. I think what I found was the exam I thought was pretty fair. The thing that I found, and this isn't giving away any specific questions, at least when I took it, the training is excellent. So go to the Microsoft Learn or take the training class if you can. It's very, very good content. And I'm just saying that because anyway. But take the exam go to the training. But I thought the exam, because the nice thing about the MB600 course is it balances what you need to do as an architect from not a technical perspective, but working in a project and collaboration and soft skills and all kinds of things like that. And those are harder to test for in a question. So I thought the questions were more towards the technical side of it, which again, it's not super technical. It's more functional, but I understand why that is, because again, it's hard to test somebody's ability to collaborate on a question.
Correct.
So Absolutely. That's why I think more than most, probably MB600 and MB400 going through the training content is equal or greater value than the exam itself. So
nice
with that. So yes, you should definitely do that. You have no training class, you have no teaching going on for the next few weeks. So go ahead and sign up. I've done all my exams online, and it's gotten better. So put it that way.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm
never
still nervous.
I always just go to my local test center.
My local test center has like computers from 1998.
Yes, that is correct.
Desks that pieces are falling off of.
Well, as does mine, but I have a very strict process that I do.
You've heard about this process.
Same test center. I go to the same test center, and before that, I go to the same Panera bread, and I order the same kind of bagel, a blueberry bagel with, a schmear, and small coffee, and I listen to a podcast, and then I go take my exam, and I haven't failed yet, so I kind of don't want to mess with that.
Sounds like an excuse.
Well, the only time I have taken an exam outside of that process was when I took it at Ignite, but I did get a bagel before I took the exam, so I didn't break the entire process.
Wow.
You could come close.
Yeah, dedication is what it is.
Yes.
So anybody want to say anything grumpy since George couldn't be here?
We could talk about Tesla for 20 minutes. That would help.
Yeah.
No.
Well, Julie, thanks
I'm going to assume that George is working hard because he owes me something.
He heard you were going to be here, so he's not showing his face because he knew you were going to be here and asking about that thing.
Exactly.
He's working hard at dodging you.
Exactly. I'm so miserable to work with.
Yeah, well, Julie, thanks for joining us and talking about brain dumps and training and all this fun stuff. Anything you'd like to promote that you haven't already?
We're working on our training site, 365.training, and hopefully building up a good library of content there. We've got some free offerings and some paid offerings, and great group of authors that are collaborating to get some good training content out there for practical experience and knowledge.
And you can watch all 48 hours of the first, or 49 hours of the first two Power Platform 24 conferences there.
Yep, those are all there. I've got a new series of classes that I'm doing. It's 0 to something. So 0 to model driven is a course that's complete. 0 to Canvas is complete and released. And I'm in progress on 0 to Portal, where it's a hands-on labs-based course where you get maybe 5 or 10 minutes of me explaining the concept, and then you go build stuff.
Cool.
That's awesome.
And David's Power Automate course is awesome. He's got a great free introduction to CDS course and stuff too. So,
yep,
good stuff. Well, thank you, Julie. Thank you, Sean. And
welcome.
Thank you for listening to CRM Audio. Join us next time.